Namo Phat. Thanks so much for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The fourth mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I vow to cultivate loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and to relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I'm determined to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I will not spread news I do not know to be certain, and will not criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause a family or community to break. I'm determined to make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. For our Dharma lessons, we're reading Ajahn Munindo's book, Unexpected Freedom. We're in a chapter called Truly Comfortable, with today's section, Another Type of Comfort. So the tools of spiritual discipline must be picked up in the right way. The challenges to our preferences need to be grasped with right understanding. If we always cultivate feeling comfortable, if we always give ourselves what we want when we want it, then the chances are that we will never get to see preferences as preferences. We will never get to see our likes and dislikes as merely conditioned tendencies of mind. If we always follow our preferences, then we will always feel like they are me. Every time I give myself what I want, I feel gratified, and this I grows a little bigger and a little happier. And every time I succeed in avoiding that which I don't like, I feel a little more pleased with myself. But the way of the Dharma is not always to give ourselves what we want, and not always to turn away from that which we don't like. In this way, we go against our preferences in order to see their conditioned nature. By practicing according to these principles, we discover the possibility of another level of comfort. There is an initial level of comfort or happiness that comes from gratifying our desires and according with our preferences, and there is another level of happiness which comes as a direct result of our willingness to go against desires, from knowing that we don't have to gratify our desires, from understanding that all our preferences are conditioned. That's why I say that purification, the primary spiritual activity, means opposing preferences in order to learn about the greater comfort that is the heart being at ease with itself. Such comfort is not merely physical, mental, or emotional, but is a contentment in the core of our being that arises with understanding, with seeing clearly. Some years ago, I accepted an invitation to visit a friend in Beijing with the aim of going together with him to Kyoto in Japan. I had wanted to go to Japan for as long as I could remember, and since my friend was working in China, and I was en route from visiting family in New Zealand back to the UK, it wasn't too big a deviation to stop off in China. The thought of going there occupied my mind for a long time in advance. The idea of getting to Japan at last and seeing those beautiful gardens and temples in Kyoto was wonderful. But as it happened, my connecting flight from Shanghai to Beijing was canceled. I found myself alone in the airport without any money and with nowhere to stay. It was quite an ordeal, with teams of angry Chinese travelers competing for empty seats on later flights. Almost nobody spoke English, and they were not at all impressed with my commitment to the holy life. Eventually, after nearly losing my passport and standing outside on the tarmac for a long time in the freezing February night, I boarded a very cramped plane and made it to Beijing. But then our baggage was mislaid, and it was not until 2 the following morning that I got to bed. Meanwhile, My friend had returned from a meeting in Hong Kong in which he had been subject to a flagrant betrayal of trust by a co-worker, and his flight had also been delayed. When we woke in the morning, we both had sore throats and were thoroughly miserable. When we broached the matter of going to Kyoto, it became obvious that neither of us was feeling up to it. After so much planning and anticipation, the thought of not going should have appeared unthinkable. With so much momentum, I expected it to be so. But to my surprise and pleasure, it was perfectly thinkable. So we decided not to go to Japan. In meditation that evening, I had such a happy feeling, knowing that I didn't have to get what I wanted. There was a clear recognition that the pleasure that comes with the gratification of desire was inferior to the pleasure associated with the freedom of not having to get what I want. There's a verse in the Dhammapada that reads, "It is wisdom that enables letting go of a lesser happiness in pursuit of a greater happiness." That evening I came a little closer to understanding this aspect of the Buddha's wisdom. As things worked out, by the following morning, we both felt fine again, made a dash for the airport, and had a marvelous time in Kyoto. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace. Namo Adirafa. Thanks so much for joining me today.